Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. As you know, the general election is upon us. It's next week. And I'm here today to assure all Michigan citizens that the election will be safe, secure, fair, and the results will be an accurate reflection of the will of the people. We want Michigan voters to be confident that no matter how they choose to cast their ballot or who they vote for, they will be safe, their vote will be counted securely, and the results of the election, again, will be an accurate reflection of the will of the voters. In fact, nearly 1.3 million citizens have already submitted their ballots securely and conveniently by mail, or have hand-delivered it to their local clerk's office or local drop box. And in the days ahead, we are on track to see another 3 million citizens make their voices heard in this election. And the vast majority, if not all, will have a calm, smooth experience in doing so. I'm confident in this because election officials and law enforcement are more prepared than ever before to immediately address any attempt to interfere or disrupt the elections process or intimidate voters, and they will work with us to ensure that all voters are safe and their rights are protected. We've worked with election officials, statewide as well as federal, state and local law enforcement agencies, and we will work with all of them continually to ensure the safety and security of every voter and every person in this election. We made $8 million available in grants directly to clerks for election security earlier this year, and we've also provided a poll worker code of conduct for each clerk to have and to offer to election workers before their shifts begin. And on Election Day, my office, the Michigan Attorney General's office, and other agencies will again have field teams all across the state able to support and respond to election officials and voters quickly whenever needed. So today I'm asking every eligible citizen to join us, participate in this election, make your voice heard in your community, and help determine the future of Michigan and the future of our democracy. And if any citizen, any voter, does witness or experience any attempt to interfere in the elections process or intimidate any voter at any time before, on, or after Election Day, we ask that you contact your local clerk to report it and also report it to 866-OUR-VOTE. That's 866-OUR-VOTE. That is a national nonpartisan voter protection hotline that we are directly connected to. And by calling that, you will be connected to people in Michigan who will work with us and other agencies to immediately address and resolve any issues. I also want voters to know that this year they should expect, as it was in 2020, that it might take until about 24 hours after the polls close before all votes are counted and the unofficial results are reported. Some jurisdictions may be done more quickly, but barring any disruption, we expect it will take until Wednesday, late in the afternoon or evening, for all jurisdictions to have finished counting and reporting their results. This is because the state legislature only allowed some jurisdictions to do limited pre-processing of absentee ballots prior to Election Day. But throughout Election Day and after the polls close at 8 p.m., rest assured that professional election administrators from both sides of the aisle will be working to validate and tabulate every valid vote. In doing so, they will rightly prioritize security, transparency, and accuracy over speed. Voters should be wary of the likelihood that some bad actors may seize on this time and space between when the polls close and the unofficial results are announced to spread misinformation and lies about the security of the tabulation process and preemptively attempt to declare results. We're asking you to remember that only a full tabulation of every valid vote will determine the winner in any election contest. We, our office, will transparently share the facts and data of the election, just as we always have, as we move along the days ahead, and we will fact-check misinformation on our website, michigan.gov/vote. Additionally, voters can turn to trusted sources for information, like their local election clerk, to ensure that they have accurate election results and information. Already, we're seeing the first of what we have seen for years: meritless lawsuits used to get one's name in the news and gain media attention, cause confusion, and sow seeds of doubt among voters. While these suits are ultimately resolved by the judges in accordance with the law, voters can expect that many of the seeds of doubt that they plant will resurface, potentially after the election. As I mentioned, judges will resolve these suits based on evidence and in accordance with the law, but voters should also be wary of the seeds of doubt these lawsuits seek to plant and expect them to resurface in other ways after the election. Because just as we saw in 2020, what we are seeing now unfold are lawsuits being used not to enforce the law, but to instead further political agendas and strategies, and sow seeds of doubt among citizens. But it doesn't matter how many meritless challenges and lawsuits are filed, which party election workers come from, or if a citizen votes absentee or in person. The law is clear. Citizens have the right to cast their ballot free from intimidation, and election workers must count every valid vote in a nonpartisan and unbiased manner. And we will work to ensure that law is enforced and that every voter and vote is protected. On that note, I'll close for questions. Thank you again for joining us here today.
Yes. Orlando Grant Williams from Both Michigan. Any idea right now, just looking at the absentee numbers, registrations, what do you think will be the turnout among Michigan residents?
We are on track to have a high turnout midterm election. It'll be probably likely among the highest turnout midterm elections that we've seen in Michigan, based on simply the numbers of people who have requested absentee ballots, and we are prepared for such a high turnout election.
There's some cynicism around turnout, though, especially in the city of Detroit, potentially being as low as 28%. Do you think that's due to, voter apathy, a lack of, knowledge, or do you think it even has something to do with these lawsuits?
It could be all of the above. We certainly know there are strategies in place to try to depress turnout in urban areas, not just here in Michigan, but in other parts of the country. And part of the strategy behind meritless lawsuits or other misinformation is a scare tactic to deter people from believing that if they vote, their vote is going to count. And I'm here today as the state's chief election officer to say, yes, indeed, your vote will count. Yes, indeed, you have a right to vote absentee in this state. And under the state constitution and our laws, that absentee vote, if once validated, will be tabulated. And so our job and the job of Republican, Democrat, and independent election officials all across the state, including here in the city, will be to cut through that misinformation and the noise to make sure voters can have faith in our elections and rightly place faith that when they vote, their vote will be counted.
Secretary Benson, Laura Herbert from WDET. There's a case headed before the Michigan Supreme Court about robocalls. Do you have any comments on the merits of that particular case?
We're going to be there's a lot of different litigation evolving, and as a general pattern, we don't comment on specific suits until they're resolved because so much is unfolding as we go along the process. I think what we've seen almost across the board is the use and, in my view, abuse of the legal system to further political agendas through meritless lawsuits as opposed to enforcing the law. Yet our office and the clerks across the state will work to, again, continue ensuring alongside judges that the law is enforced and then also to provide clarity to voters and to clerks as lawsuits are resolved, how we move forward to ensure voters have accurate information and that the election process goes smoothly.
Secretary,
yes.
I'm just curious how the department is handling with the pending litigation against the poll challenger instructions. How is the department operating now? I know you had the intent to appeal, but what is the instruction in the interim if that doesn't get resolved in time?
We anticipate it will be resolved in time. And so in that regard, we're continuing to move along the legal process. And even though we are getting close to Election Day, we have every confidence to believe there will be clarity and resolution, both from our office and the courts prior to Election Day itself.
When you communicate with local clerks, what are you anticipating for the performance of some of the election challengers that have been recruited and some of the poll workers? I know that there's a lot of new people that are going to be a part of Election Day next week.
I think it's a great thing when people of both parties, and we certainly work to ensure people of both parties are present at the polls. Transparency is key to countering misinformation. But there's a line that is crossed sometimes where disruption and interference with the voting process occurs. And that's where we step in to, again, ensure that the law is followed. That said, the vast majority of people who will be working in elections at the polling places on election day all across the state are folks who are professionals who've done this before. There have been new poll workers recruited into the process this year from both sides of the aisle. That's a great thing, and we expect everyone to follow the law, and that's why issuing a poll worker code of conduct helps provide clarity and consistency for what expectations are once in the polling place. It's also important to remember that poll workers are ultimately employees of the jurisdictions that hire them, and we are working directly with jurisdictions as well to ensure that any employee at any part in the elections process who violates the law is quickly that it is immediately addressed and held accountable as possible under the law.
So on Wednesday, Secretary Wilson, votes hopefully will be in, now that the people who have spoken. Any thoughts or concerns about, boards of canvassers
Mhm.
supposedly, allegedly be ready to, do their ministerial duty? Any thoughts that may not happen? There could be some disruption there?
We hope and expect that every single member of a state or local board of canvassing authority will follow the law and follow their legal duty, which is ministerial, to ensure that the election is certified, that the election results after the canvassing period are certified so that we can move forward with every other aspect of the elections process. The Attorney General has already spoken to the consequences for not complying with the legal duty that appointees have in that regard, and we will simply work to ensure that the law and procedures and expectations that voters have of these officials comes to fruition, and we hope that it is a smoother process, and we hope and are hopeful for full compliance with the law. But again, we're prepared for contingencies as well, as we've seen unfold in other states. I think the important thing for people to know, and we'll talk more about the post-election certification process after the election, is that the law is clear. These local and the state board of canvassers have a legal duty to certify the election, and we'll work to make sure that law is enforced. And people should also understand that is potentially, we've seen this play out in other ways in other states, a strategy to create confusion and chaos and delegitimize the process to potentially delay or block certification. If anyone attempts that, those efforts will be fruitless and unsuccessful, and possibly, depending on the context, run afoul of the law. We'll again work to just simply make sure that everything goes as smoothly as possible, and we hope everyone involved in the process joins us in that. Yes.
Counting aside, do you have any concerns about the administration of absentee voting in Detroit?
We are aware of the potential, as we saw in 2020, for bad actors to try to disrupt the validation and the fair and secure tabulation of valid votes here in the city of Detroit and in other parts around the state as well. So we're tracking that. I mean, we're working directly with law enforcement at local, state, and federal levels. The law is clear as to how procedures should go, and we are going to ensure that law is followed. One of the things in the meetings that we've had over the last several weeks in preparation for Tuesday and the tabulation process here in Detroit and elsewhere, one of the things that has given me a lot of optimism that any disruption will be minimized quickly and accountability sought is that we are working more directly with law enforcement at all levels than ever before. And we are all more prepared and more on guard than ever before. In part because of what we observed and saw in 2020 in the election since. So, to the extent that people are planning or preparing for anything, so are we. And our job is to make sure that votes are counted and the law is followed. Thank you all. I'm sure we'll talk again before too long. And also to note, as our team will remind you, we'll have periodic and frequent updates with the media throughout election day and in the days that follow to ensure that you all have access to all the information we do about the security, safety, and accuracy of the voting process. Thanks, everyone.